drop the mix
Hey guys, what's up? It's Grim Reaper 97 here, back bringing you guys my first video in about 2 months. Yeah guys, I know I haven't done a video in a really long time, but more or less I've just kind of been busy with real life stuff, and to be honest, I just kind of wanted to take a break from YouTube. It got to the point where it just kind of stopped being fun for me in a way, and I just kind of wanted to take a break and really reevaluate what I was doing with the channel. So I have done said reevaluation, and I'm now back bringing you guys some Destiny content. What you're seeing in the background at the moment is a kind of the end of a strike mission. This is the boss of the moon mission, Thogoth the Untamed, I think. You guys can obviously work out what he's saying because his name tag's right there. I would like to say about this gameplay, it is a bit... it's not the greatest boss gameplay ever. I do have my ass handed to me quite a few times. I will be cutting the respawn times, particularly the ones where I obviously have to wait because they're just boring as hell, but more or less you kind of get the point, is that I didn't exactly go in here prepared with the big guy. This was my first time doing that strike, because I just hadn't been playing the strikes up until then, mostly because I just hadn't really had anyone to play the strikes with, but more or less I tried the strike with 2 randoms and we managed to actually do it quite well, so we ended up beating him just after a lot of bullets went into him. Now, you're probably wondering, why am I showing you this boss gameplay in particular, where it kind of has to do with the topic I want to talk about today. And although it's not exactly a Destiny commentary, it's more kind of like talking about games in general, it's kind of got a lot to do about just overall Destiny's bosses being the kind of the worst kind of example. So, what am I talking about? I am talking about the death of the boss. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, let me run you guys back a little bit through my history of gaming, my long and epic gaming career, which basically spans like a few years. But more or less, one of the first game consoles I ever owned was an N64. Yeah, shocker, I know. I'm an old man now. You know, I use one of those old consoles that, you know, those far distant ones that only operated on, you know, 1 polygon per second and all that kind of crap. But at the time, the N64 was my, you know, was my baby. We had a lot of good times together, and to be honest, it was a great console at the time. I enjoyed it. I loved using it, and just overall, even though it was not the greatest thing, the cartridges got stuck. And it had the graphics resolution that is beaten by my phone at the moment. It was a great console, and it had great games on it. And 2 of my favourite games on the entirety of the console were Super Mario 64 and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And both of them had some really interesting boss fights. Now, a lot of things about boss fights, I will say, it has to have a very specific mechanic, and a lot of that will be rinse and repeat, because obviously you need to be a little bit more prepared about it. But I like having bosses with specific mechanics. Now, okay, I'll start with Super Mario 64. First of all, let's actually even start with the original boss, the first boss in that game, which is King Bob-omb. Now, King Bob-omb lived on the top of a mountain. This sounds like I'm telling a story to a load of children. It's like, King Bob-omb lived on a mountain high up. But more or less, he lived on the top of a mountain, and to defeat him, you had to go all the way to the top of a mountain, get behind him, grab him, and throw him on his butt 3 times, and then he'd give up. Now, there were a few catches. If you threw him off the mountain, he'd jump back up, and it wouldn't count as an attack. And if you just ran up and punched him, he'd just come around, grab you, and throw you off. If you happened to land on your butt, you'd get a little bit hurt, but at the same time, you would, if you got thrown off the mountain, you'd have to go all the way back up and restart the entire thing. Now, this was a really quite hard boss fight just for the first one, because if you messed it up, you'd be pretty mad. You'd be pretty mad, and the mountain itself was not fun to climb up of. Admittedly, there were certain advantages. If you got the wing cap, you could just easily fly up there, and to be honest, King Bob-omb was not the fastest guy ever, so getting behind him was not tricky, but at the same time, it had a very specific kind of ring to it. And the same thing happened to the big guy himself, Bowser. In his particular stages, you had to actually run up, grab him in the tail, and throw him at some mines. And believe me, aiming at those mines is not fun or easy, because if you just throw him off the edge again, he'd just jump up and actually call you a cheater. And then and to be honest, you had to throw him at the mines or he would fall off, so it was kind of a bit annoying. Admittedly, you only had to throw him in the mines once, the first time, second, third time, and obviously 3 times at the end, but it was still a tricky little fight. And it wasn't easy. Now, that was the first kind of instance for me of a decent different boss fight, but Legend of Zelda also had its own particular things. Now, for this, I'd like to point out my 2 bosses for a selection of this are, first of all, Ganondorf himself, because he was a particularly tricky one, because you couldn't just run up and hit him. You actually had to get your light arrows out, and you had to go fire. You had to like shoot him with the light arrow, run up, beat him up, rinse and repeat, and it wasn't easy. Admittedly, he had different stages and everything like that, and as a boss fight, he was particularly hard, but that was not the boss fight that stuck in my head the most. The one that stuck in my head the most was the Water Temple boss. Now, I hated that thing. The Water Temple boss was basically a big pool of water with a big squishy thing inside, and he was inside this room with some custom spike wallpaper that looks like a cross between a soundproof room and a torture chamber, to be honest, because the spikes were massive. And more or less, you had to fight the pool of water. If you jumped in the pool of water, you get slowly damaged, picked up by this kind of globulous jelly thing, and thrown at the wall, which, as previous mentioned, was not a fun experience. So it was not easy, and to defeat him, you had to actually go up to him, wait until he came up in a kind of like Ghostbusters 2 head thing with the blob in it in the middle of it, trying to see you, pull it out with a long shot, which is kind of like a grappling hook, beat that up, rinse and repeat. That was not easy. First of all, it took me ages to work out that was actually it. Admittedly, I was a young kid, and to be honest, at the time, I was kind of like, how the hell do I hurt this thing? How do I hurt this thing? But it took me ages to work out, and once I had worked it out, I kind of like, it was tricky to do, because obviously the head didn't rear up all the time, and to be honest, the attacks were just frequent and very painful, which often culminated in you getting picked up and thrown against the wall, again, as mentioned, which was not fun. So, again, it was an interesting and difficult boss fight, but with a lot of... But that was my kind of like, that was my setting of boss fights. Basically, you have a load of really difficult bosses in the middle of the game, and then you have the final boss who is really difficult, and then he has probably multiple stages. As of recently with games, I haven't felt a lot of that. Admittedly, a lot of the kind of the various mechanics involved into shoot the guy a bit, which for shooters is completely understandable, because let's face it, it's really quite hard to work in a mechanic like, you know, pull something in, or, you know, shoot something or beat something up with a specific combo when you're just a character with a gun. And I can understand shooting the glow bits, but for now, for a lot of things, it's just basically shoot the glow bits from start to get-go and just over and over again, firing as much ammunition into it as possible. Whereas, even with some shooters, like I think Gears of War had a good one where it was shoot the glow bits. Sometimes shooting the glow bits got rid of that bit completely, and then it would have to get another glowy bit. You'd have to shoot a different bit, or it would spawn stronger. It would spawn the glow bit would be harder to hit, and stuff like that. I just kind of wish came back, and it's not as if games these days don't have decent like shooting. It's just that it seems to be disappearing. Another example of this is basically like, I don't know, to be honest, it's not so much about shoot the glowy bit to defeat the boss, it's more about health bars and just pouring as much ammunition or swording. A good 2 examples of this are about games that basically you don't need to have too much of that. Is Darksiders 2 was a good game for like basically where you could have the mechanic, because a couple of the bosses did have health bars, I'll admit, but they were different to defeat. They went into stages and they weren't always easy to hit them. You had to bring them down, or in the case of one of the bosses, you had to actually climb him, Shadow of the Colossus style, and hit the glow bits, and then that would disappear and you'd have to go around and hit the other bit, and it was all very confusing. And then, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's games like Skyrim, which was basically you had to, you know, hit it with your sword enough, you had to bring it down, hit it with your sword, rinse and repeat, and it kind of get a bit tedious after a while. And for me, a lot of games have just kind of lost the feeling of what a decent boss is, which is, at the end of the day, it's going to be something which challenges you. It's going to be something which has an area which is hard to hit. It's going to evolve. It's going to try and fight you. It's not just going to basically hit you with its attacks and just work till you hit it. It's going to find a way of stopping you attacking it. It's going to move, it's going to shift, it's going to do something, and it's basically not going to be the evolution of the hardest hitting enemy in the ranks. I mean, come on, that's what all the strike mission bosses are. Higher level ogre, higher level what's it called, come to me, servitor, higher level knight, and all that kind of thing. It's going to be a different boss. It's going to be something interesting, a different creature. It's going to be something so awe-inspiring. It makes you want to drop your weapon and run for your mum. But I don't get that anymore with bosses. Basically, oh, okay, higher evolution enemy. Let me just whip out my rocket launcher, shoot the guy a bit, and eventually it'll fall. That's cool. So, yeah, I kind of miss the good old-fashioned boss fights. But at the same time, I can see that maybe for shooter genes that wouldn't be the best thing. But it's not as if the shooter gene doesn't have decent bosses. A good example would be the Halo 2 boss, which would be the End Brute, who was quite tricky to defeat because admittedly he wasn't just a normal brute. He got overshields, he moved around a lot, and to be honest, he was a real bit of a tricky son of a gun to kill. Let's put it that way. But he was a good boss because he was different, he was tricky, and you couldn't just shoot him to win. You had to find a way of defeating his shield and then shoot him, and his shield recharged. You see, that was different. But I don't know, maybe I don't know, bosses are becoming just stuff we can shoot at the end of the game, something to say, oh yeah, I defeated X, X, and Y. Maybe what we really need is a kind of a different boss, a kind of new level, an evolution of the bad guy at the end of the game who just challenges your beliefs and what you want to defeat. Because at the end of the day, as much as the common grunt may be anyone's enemy, surely the enemy of every gamer, the fear at the bottom of our fingers when we press those buttons, is we want to get to the end of the game, we want to find the boss, and we want to give him a thorough thrashing for kidnapping our princess or destroying our land or taking our family. Surely at the end of the game we want to have a challenge for all the fighting and all the grinding we've done. Surely we want to have something we can mark as our growing within the game, of the fact we've leveled up, we've gotten the end sword, and we've gotten the thing that can beat him. So that's just my opinion. Leave me down, tell me down below in the comments, guys, whether you think I'm right, whether you think the boss has de-evolved, and whether you think that hopefully we can have a new boss. The type of boss would be something that the gaming industry needs. Anyway, guys, if you like this video, then please do click that like button. If you'd like to subscribe for more Grimtastic videos, though they may not be as frequent as they used to be, please do click that button. And of course, if you would like to talk to me about something, particularly any of the topics in the video, then please leave them down below in the comments, or, you know, check out my Twitter if you can't. Anyway, guys, catch you all later.